I would like to introduce our presenter for this afternoon, Barbara Berschler. Ms. Berschler's practice consists of general business and commercial law, with a special focus on intellectual property law, copyrights, and trademarks. She has earned both a JD Juris Doctor and an LLM Master of Laws degrees. She was awarded the Brinks, Hoffer, Gilson, and Lyle Award for Excellence in Intellectual Property Law. So, Barbara, let's start.
Thank you very much, Janine. Now we're moving into the next big topic, which is what is a trademark or a service mark. And not that these words are interchangeable, but people tend to group and everything comes under trademark. But literally, a trademark is with respect to goods, and a service mark is a mark you use in conjunction with your services. So what can stand as a mark? And you can have a word or just letters. It could be a design, but it even could be a sound. There's anything that people see consistently and they come to identify whatever that is with the product or services, then it becomes or it takes on the characteristics of a mark. But the mark always has to be used in connection with the business or enterprise. And so nonprofits, for instance, they're eligible to have trademarks as well. Next slide. So, okay, well, great. I'm going to have a trademark, but why do I have a trademark? And it's a very important piece of intellectual property. First of all, by using it, you're telegraphing or speaking to the public so they will not be confused by the source of the goods or services that they're purchasing. They want to know that it's come from X and not possibly Y and Z. Likewise, the business itself is then able to distinguish itself from its competitors. Nobody is putting out a goods or service that's just a one-off. We all have to be dealing with competitors. But by noting that this is my goods, my services, and I have a level of quality that you as the purchaser or consumer have come to expect. So I'm different from my competitors. And that's what the mark helps you stand out. And it also prevents others from taking what they call a free ride on your goodwill. So after you've built up all the goodwill, so to speak, of your product, you don't want somebody else coming along and using a mark that looks a lot like yours and fooling people, confusing them as to what was the source of the product or service. Next slide. Okay, so what do you get when you have a trademark? Similar to copyright, you get an exclusive right. Exclusive is exclusive, and it's the right to use the mark with your goods or services. And we can imagine that the trademark can become a valuable business asset. It's a form of property. So if you're going to sell your business, people that are going to buy the business would want to acquire any marks, the ownership in any marks that you used. And so since it's a piece of property, it can be bought, sold, or in most instances, licensed. Next slide. Unlike copyright and patents, which are federally regulated, in the area of trademark, there's a combination. It can be protected under federal law. It can also be protected under state law. And that grows out of what's called the common law. So court decisions that have been ruled in even as far back as we said to the English common law. When you are using a mark that is not a federally registered mark, then you might want to place the TM or an SM near the mark, because then that's putting people on notice. Hey, I claim this as my mark, so don't mess with me. Now, certain states in the country also let you register with them. And so, for example, we have Virginia and Maryland in this area, but not the District of Columbia. If you are in a position to register the mark with the federal government, then once you have that certification, you're able to use the R with the circle. But in the case of to have a federally registered mark, the mark must be used in interstate commerce, which means across state lines. Next slide. As I said earlier, a lot of things can be serve the purpose of being a mark. So we're all familiar with words. We have apple, and that's a famous word. Question is, if I say apple, do you think of the fruit or do you think of the company and the products that they offer? It could even be a series of letters. So lots of networks, NBC, TNT, FX, all of those have acquired mark characteristics for the organizations they're with. Even a series of numbers can come to stand for, let's say, a particular model of car. Another source of marks are logos, and they tend to be pictures, designs, or symbols. And so a good example of a picture is if you purchase Sun-made raisins, you're going to see on the box a picture of a young girl with a basket of raisins. In the case of a design, let's say it could be Burberry's plaid. So other people that are selling the linings that go in raincoats or something, they cannot be looking like Burberry plaid. A very famous symbol is Nike's swoosh. You just see the swoosh and you immediately think of Nike. Now, it took Nike a long time to get to that state. They didn't have that kind of recognition from the beginning, but in all cases, these people and organizations pay a lot of money to keep enforcing in your mind that this is their mark. Another mark might be a name. So it's not for the name's sake, but let's say in the case of Dell, the computer company, it's come to be associated with their product. Those of you who are in business already or thinking about it, what do you do before you adopt the mark? So one thing is, once you've come up with something, it would be really important and a good idea to search, because it's really hard to come up with something that's totally original. So you want to look out there, you want to check on Google, you want to know in your industry or your competitors anything that would contradict or conflict with what it is you're choosing or wanting to adopt. So that's important. And it's better to know now rather than a year later when you've spent a lot of money. So you want to find that out. And if you hire a professional searcher, they're going to go to the USPTO, the Patent and Trademark Office, and they're going to search for existing marks, canceled marks, those that are in the process of being applied for, and then be able to see or rule out that there isn't somebody else that's already in the process of getting a federal registration that's going to be offering similar goods and services to you. They'll also look at what's the common law marks, and those could be the state registrations. And then because of a design element that would appear in the logo, you also want to be sure that your logo doesn't pick up on somebody else's copyrighted protected material. Next slide. Okay, so now you've decided where I've identified it. So now I want to register my mark. And so we've conducted the search. And in the application, you're going to have to identify the goods or services or can be both that you're offering. You have to identify them and have them in a certain what's called an international class. Then you're going to need to tell the PTO when you first used the mark and when was the first time it got used in interstate commerce. You identify who is the owner. In the case of a logo, you'll provide that. Now, in the case of trademark, federally registered trademark, the terms run in 10-year increments. And so if you renew it, this can go on for a very long time. But if you fail to pay the fees or the filings that are necessary, then the USPTO would consider the mark abandoned. However, it doesn't mean that it's not a mark. It's just not going to be considered a federally registered mark. Next slide. Now, how do you go about protecting your mark? Well, an important thing is to continuously use the mark in connection with your goods or services. And if you have to overdo it in the beginning, fine, because you want to align in the mind of the consumer your mark and your goods or services. You need to police your mark to be sure that people out there aren't already trying to copy it in some way or use it inappropriately. Now, if you license your mark and allow a third party to be able to use it, you want to be sure that you're checking up on them, that they're living up to the quality levels that you expect the mark to have, because otherwise they're going to cause you to lose goodwill. If there are infringements, then you want to address them. And of course, we want to comply with the requirements of the USPTO.